And now, marine weather around Alaska. Welcome aboard. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. And this outlook will be for Wednesday and Thursday, but we start out with the sea ice. And of note, we still have a fair amount of ice south of St. Lawrence Island and on the north side of the island, as well as the south end of Norton Sound. And a few days ago, some boaters had to be rescued just because of the shifting ice. So be careful of that, because we do have a push of brisk northwest winds coming southward with a front that'll be with us through the midweek period, which may cause this remaining ice to shift around, but it will continue to melt off as we get deeper into the late spring and early summer season. Stronger low, though, later tonight and on Wednesday morning entering the Gulf. This low is pulling back to the north and west, and it's going to force this frontal system that has an atmospheric river, deep moisture with it, that's going to bring some locally heavier rainfall to the Panhandle. As much as 2.5 to 3.5 inches of rain could fall the southern Panhandle around Prince of Wales Island, Ketchikan, Metlakatla. And as it goes further north, 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain, especially along the outer coast, along with some low-end gale force winds with this system as it pulls back toward the western Gulf. Meanwhile, farther north, this cold front will produce snow, some accumulating mainly light snow along the spine of the Brooks Range, north slope up into the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. So expect some low clouds and some areas of light snow expanding there through the day Wednesday into early Thursday. So that low in the Gulf is going to pull back toward just off the Kenai coast in the western Gulf, 978 low with this occluded front pushing up into the Panhandle. There'll be yet another system coming up from the North Pacific by the time we get into Thursday night and Friday. So this is a rather active weather pattern that'll continue for the Panhandle and along the Gulf Coast. The cold front will allow some colder air to come down along the west side of the state, the west coast, Wednesday into Thursday. So there will be brisker winds through the Bering Strait, west side here of St. Lawrence, or I should say St. Lawrence Island, the west side of the Seward Peninsula, and especially along the coastal areas of the Yukon Delta. And then for Thursday, the remnant low sitting back here, same position just off the Kenai, northeast of Kodiak Island with a weakening front. And then here comes that next low that'll bring another round of at least light to moderate rain to the Panhandle for Thursday night into the day on Friday, early Saturday, more of a Friday time frame to close out the week. And still could be some light snow along the Beaufort Sea coast there for Thursday. So looking at the marine forecast for the inner channels of the Panhandle, Lynn Canal and Stevens Passage, notice the winds northerly 20 knots, Lynn Canal 3-4 foot waves, but southeast winds on the other side of the front. 25 knots, Stevens Passage waves to 5 feet, 35 knots southeast winds here down in this area of Dixon Entrance, waves as high as 10, 11 feet. The outer coast, generally southeast south winds, anywhere from 25 knots or so to 35 knots. And generally, I would anticipate you're at least going to get some gusts to low-end gale force there along the outer coast during the day on Wednesday. And then for Thursday, the winds do come down a bit. We're looking at south-southeast winds across the inner channels, 20 knots for Lynn Canal and Stevens Passage, waves running 3-4 feet. But down as you get toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, south winds to 25 knots, 4-5 foot waves. South of Sitka, winds will be southerly 20 knots and waves running right around 8 feet. Southeast winds 20-25 knots out of Cross Sound up to outside of Yakutat Bay with waves of 9 feet. Northwestern Gulf for Prince William Sound on Wednesday, northwest winds 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. Outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, winds generally out of the easterly 20 knots toward Kayak Island. And then as we look at Cook Inlet, kind of a mixed bag of winds. Variable winds, upper Cook Inlet at 10 knots, waves just a foot or two. West winds coming in there just near north of Anchor Point at 10 knots, but look for east-northeast winds, lower Cook Inlet, Kennedy Entrance, and along the north side there of Kodiak Island with waves running 3 to as high as 7 feet out there as you get into the Gulf. And then for Thursday, Southeast winds to 20 knots there within Prince William Sound and outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, waves 4 feet within Prince William Sound, as high as 10 feet or so outside of Hinchinbrook. And then for the length of the Cook Inlet, we are looking at south winds of 15 knots with waves generally running 3 to 4 feet on Thursday. For Wednesday, Kodiak Island will see northeasterly winds of 20 to 25 knots, waves 5 feet there within Shelikof Strait. Those winds are going to come around to the west-northwest as we trail out down along the peninsula. 15 to 20 knots there either side Cold Bay to False Pass. And then on Thursday, winds will be southwesterly 15 to 20 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, west to northwest 15 to 20 knots on the North Pacific side, and west to southwest 15 to 20 knots on the Bering side. For the eastern Aleutians, winds will generally be out of the north 20 to 25 knots around Unalaska Dutch Harbor, falling off to 15 knots Nikolsky through Atka and Adak all the way to Kiska, before shifting to the northwest 15 knots west of Kiska to Shemya. And generally speaking, for Thursday, the eastern and central Aleutians will experience westerly winds around 20 knots. As you get west of Adak, they'll become west-southwest, generally at 20 knots as well. For Wednesday, along the southwest coast, we have southeast winds of 10 knots within Bristol Bay, north winds of 20 knots out of Kuskokwim Bay, and those north winds will continue, as I was telling you, that shot of cooler air coming southward along the west coast. So St. Matthew, Nunavik Island, Etolan Strait, lower Yukon coast, and the wider expanse here of Norton Sound between Kotlik and Nome. We're looking for a northerly wind at 20 knots with 4-foot waves, so there could be some ice shifting around in these areas where you have that remnant ice. And then on Thursday, we still have those northerly winds holding up. Waves build a bit there from Norton Sound down along the lower Yukon coast, waves 5-6 feet, and then still northwest to west winds from Kuskokwim Bay down to Bristol Bay at 20 knots. North wind in the Pribilovs on Thursday, St. Paul, St. George, with waves maybe running about 4 feet. There will be brisk winds Wednesday in the wake of the colder air pouring southward through the Bering Strait. We're looking at north winds of 25 knots through the Bering Strait along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, north side of St. Lawrence Island. And where the water is open, we're looking at 4 or 5 foot waves. As we get up further north of Point Hope, Cape Lisburn, winds still northerly, falling off 10 to 15 knots, and then generally north wind along the Beaufort Sea coast east of Utqiagvik through Kaktovik at 10 knots. And on Thursday, I should have mentioned too, you're still going to have potential for some light snow Wednesday and Thursday morning along this region, Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik. Could be some light accumulations, maybe upwards of 1 to 3 inches, and reduced visibility. North winds continuing on Thursday along the Beaufort Sea coast at 10 knots. As we come on down Utqiagvik to Wainwright, they kind of flip around north to southwest, and then northwest winds across the lower Chukchi Sea from Cape Lisburn and Point Hope into Kotzebue Sound at 15 to as high as 20 knots. Passing through the Bering Strait, west side of St. Lawrence, west side of the Seward Peninsula, on over to St. Lawrence Island to Savunga and Gamble. We're looking at northerly winds on Thursday at around 20 knots with waves of 4 to 5 feet where there is open water.